Leaders rarely pause to step back and say, what is my priority? What can only I do? I think it's our business cultures. The more you produce, the better you are, as opposed to a qualitative, am I making a difference in my area of expertise or decision making? What does success look like? It's not Jane patting them on the back. It's their peers responding differently, their projects getting done. In the safe space, if it's a one-on-one, asking them, how can you appreciate the impact you have as a leader, even though you're not delivering each aspect of the project, so that it goes from head to heart. As hardworking leaders, what they often get wrong about motivation is it changes per person. The team knows how to improve. They just are too busy and don't want to criticize and don't go there. We only change through practice and through knowing I'm going to have to report back on something. Great leadership is...
Well, Jane, thanks for coming on our show. You have worked everywhere from Wall Street to war rooms, from INSEAD to executive boardrooms. What's been the most surprising lesson you've learned about leadership in the past decade?
The most surprising lesson is how leaders rarely pause to step back and say, what is my priority? What can only I do? They are all so overloaded and they're used to delivering that it's a hard synapse to say, okay, what's a priority? Postpone this and focus on this. Sounds obvious, but it's hard in today's world.
Where do you think that comes from? Do you think it's a kind of fear of losing control of things, or what do you think it is that makes leaders struggle with that?
I think it's our business cultures. The more you produce, the better you are, as opposed to a qualitative, am I making a difference in my area of expertise or decision making?
Okay, so it's focused on the wrong thing, essentially.
Culturally, because we've been gotten good grades, promoted, gotten good jobs because we outperformed.
You have pivoted away from the public sector. Well, in your CIA or UN internships, was there a moment that crystallized that it wasn't a good fit for you anymore?
Yes. Within a month, I realized the deliverables and the impact of the deliverables weren't resonating with me. Public policy was a tad medium term for immediate business results, Jane. So I respect what they do and the need for medium term, but it wasn't for me.
Could you talk about running a $30 million division on the transition to coaching leaders? Was there ever a moment that you thought, like, am I really doing this? And how did you make that leap from operator to advisor?
It was a huge leap because of my upbringing and mental synapse that the more money, the more impact. And I made the switch because of a coincidental meeting where somebody outlined the impact they were having as a team coach. And I said, okay, I can do that. And luckily there's enough money in the bank so I could take the risk of going solo.
Coming back to leadership and helping leaders to grow, I think you've said that you only share best practices when a leader is ready to change or ready or open to grow. What are the signs that tell you that a leader is in the right place to be ready to make that transition?
After there has been an honest exchange, which requires trust, they identify one way they want to change. And when I ask why, they can link it to their work goals. So it's not only them saying it, but it's them linking it. And then 2 weeks later, them having tried it. So there's a difference between desire, seeing the ROI, and physically actually trying it. So those steps are necessary.
It's an accountability thing. Like not just say I'm going to do it, but actually do it and feedback on that.
Yes. And not just which bitch Jane saying you didn't do it, but them having the safe space to articulate why they didn't, why they might, what would motivate them, what would be ROI for them, what does success look like? It's not Jane patting them on the back, it's their peers responding differently, their projects getting done.
You've built powerful peer groups and team diagnostics. Can you walk us through what happens behind the scenes when a leader says something is not working? Where do you start?
Peer groups, 6 to 12, no bigger. There's no behind the scenes. We are behind the scenes. So there's a certain trust. The reason they get an ROI out of the time spent in a peer group is twofold. One, they have to identify, think about, and articulate. They have to bring a challenge or opportunity. So like we said earlier, in response to Becky's question, stepping back and saying, okay, what can only I address, or what's a priority that I need to address? Particularly if you're a family owner or the founder of a firm, you're used to doing it all. Anyway, so that prep of thinking through what is one challenge. I have 15, Jane. What do you mean? Nope, just one. And then in the meeting, the process is pretty critical to have ROI, because with 6 to 12 people, there could be a lot of talking, and you don't want to be in another meeting and just listening. So the process is critical. The problem owner articulates in a couple sentences what the challenge is. And that's hard. They want to go into full background and detail. Nope, that discipline of articulating is key. The second is a question answer, not a discussion. Each member asks the problem owner a question, and very often it gets to second level questions, why and how questions. And you'll see the problem owner go, that's a good question. It's because of this that it's not happening. No discussion, next question. And the third is suggestions. Different businesses around the table, but every time they've had a similar experience, even if it's a different industry. And those suggestions, not all of them are spot on. And the problem owner can't respond and say, no, sorry, because. Just notes down all the suggestions. And then at the end, the problem owner says, okay, these 3 things were relevant. This is what I'm going to try in the next 30 days. So from a wealth of information, again, clarity on them selecting just 2 or 3 things they're going to experiment with, and knowing they're going to have to report back. And surprisingly, the other members in other industries, every time 1 or 2 of them says, oh, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. It doesn't relate to the problem they brought to the table, but it relates to all the other stuff going on at their firm. So there's cross-learning.
Yeah, the scale between the conscious mind and the unconscious mind is pretty staggering. The conscious mind can hold like a handful of things at any given time, which is why it's 4 a give or take 1. So like people with like super great memories can remember up to 5 things, but the average person maybe is 3 or 4, which is one reason why McKinsey and many places like to do 3s. Like, it's not just because 3 is this wonderful number, it's because like we can all remember it. And then you wonder like, well, what about chess masters, or what about, whatever? What they do is called chunking. So it essentially breaks down to 3 things, but those 3 things could be 3 of something else. Like think of a phone number, or, some combination that you've memorized. So when someone else asks a question, like it can like shake loose some iceberg in your unconscious that all of a sudden percolates up or floats to the top. Like, oh, I also have that question. And so it's almost like we're a bag of like fertilized soil, just meeting each other and planting this like garden. How do you help leaders shift from being the hero to becoming the guide who creates other leaders?
That's a good question. And it goes back to the last 25 years of success through being the hero and having them step back and say, can I achieve annual goals alone? No, of course not, Jane. Okay, how can you leverage your team and your peers? It's no longer just direct reports to maximize, because 1 + 1 = 3. Yeah, Jane, sure. Well, get them to bring an example to the table and say, okay, what other expertise could you leverage given your experience? Kind of make it because of your professional experience, you can share the problems. Make it a progress, not I'm passing on the work. And in the safe space, if it's a one-on-one, asking them, how do you define success, your professional success, and how can you appreciate the impact you have as a leader, even though you're not delivering? each aspect of the project so that it goes from head to heart.
So you've coached leaders at Fortune 50 companies and CEOs of scaling startups. What's one thing they all get wrong about motivation?
As hardworking leaders, what they often get wrong about motivation is it changes per person. And taking the time to truly understand what motivates him versus her, and then pushing that button in a productive way. Not every project is going to 100% fit their motivation, but if you refer to their motivation, that acknowledges them as a person, and you can say, this project is out of your sweet spot, and we need you to do it because you're good. So, get wrong about motivation is pausing to think and even take notes. David is motivated by clarity. Becky's motivated by technology. Whatever. Take notes.
Maybe not today, but yes. So I think that that question was probably similar to where I was going to be going there in terms of what are the similarities of how you notice how people are motivated. I want to dig into that a little bit more in terms of understanding the individual. What's your take on like personality profiling or disc models and things like that in order to understand motivation of teams?
I think they are most helpful because they have the leader pause and step back and think about their complex being. It's not an aha, I'm an I, or leadership circle, I am reactive in this way. It is pausing them to articulate their work environment and their behaviors linked to the strength of that research, and then apply in their work environment what they want to do about that, maintain that strength, work on that weakness. And again, one by one, you're not going to improve every personality assessment. That's not the goal. It's them choosing what's most relevant in their work environment.
I like that kind of leaning into the strengths because we'll all have things that we're great at. Part of that's personality, experience. We'll all have things we're not so great at. But by identifying, I'm sure as a leader, this person is great at communication, maybe not so great with process. But this person is really great with getting things done efficiently. They might not be great at communicating. So, where can we put them? What can they do? What projects lean into those strengths? Is that kind of what you were getting at there with what to do about it?
Bingo. And not only what can I do for them, it's asking them, what is a project or skill you want to work on? Can't guarantee I'm going to give it to you tomorrow. But again, by noting it down, most leaders tell me within 3 months, I've heard of a project where if they're willing to allocate a couple more hours a week, they could be involved. And they're like, oh, cool, thank you. They actually care about me developing, even though it's not in my function.
What you said there, Jane, I don't think you intended, but I'll just share anyway. It reminded me of Shogun. I don't know if you've read the James Clavell book or seen the recent award-winning TV series. Well made, by the way. It's based on actual Japanese history, but maybe changing some names here and there, and maybe taking some liberties. But overall, the essence of it has a lot of truth to human psychology. And the character, the Shogun, the titular character, basically, um, he's known for it's very high stakes. Japan's in the Warring States period, and everyone's vying for power. And it takes really scrappy thinking or clever thinking to scrappiness and clever thinking, I think is what I meant to say, to get ahead. And one of the strategies that the Shogun employs, or what would become the Shogun, is to, because everyone's like, let's say, I'm behind your back, Jane. I'm telling Becky, look, I'll give you $1 million if you help me beat Jane. And then behind Becky's back, I'm like, hey, Jane, I'll give you $1 million if you help me take over Becky's enterprise or whatever. And that's what it was like. Like everyone's like, no one could really trust anyone. And so one way that he went about it was he would never give people what they wanted. So to your earlier point, you understand what motivates them. Like, oh, Becky wants the title CEO. Oh, Jane wants that customer, that client. So he would never give them what they wanted, but he'd surprise them with something like unexpected. So Jane, I'm going to make you CEO. Becky, I'm going to give you McKinsey as the client. And then it's like you each feel like esteemed. Like, wow, I didn't, and you don't know that maybe the other one wanted that necessarily. So it makes you more loyal to me, And because I'm still dangling the thing that you want, but you're also like, wow, David's like a powerful ally. Like, and then you're probably less likely, and I might be oversimplifying here, and I've never tried it myself. So, but I thought that was like interesting. And I'm not necessarily advocating that CEOs do that, but I thought that was interesting, like noticing what motivates your people and then understanding kind of how to deliver that. And what I do with my team is I try to like, I look at goal alignment, because I feel like we're going to be more optimal if by working on the company, we're like kind of working on ourselves or doing like what we want. Might be easier said than done, might not always be possible, but to the greatest extent possible, I try to like align on that. And so I'm just checking like what do you want to do, like what are your goals, and then help them with that. Sometimes surprise them, like this is something I found that could help you in this regard. And so it creates this kind of, I think, trust, but also we're stronger together. And so, sometimes I think we forget that we feel we have to do everything on our own, and maybe we're not sure, like people have our backs or something. So those little, I guess, moments when, and sometimes it doesn't cost that much. It could be like an article you read about something that, like maybe you have a passion project, Jane, that you're working on, and I found this article that has this person that was researching something that's very revolutionary in that field or something, and bring it to you and mention that I sent them. Sorry.
Sorry to interrupt. Key to what the anecdote is also each of us daring to ask, daring to say, I'm interested, not just hope he knows. Because then when you see the article, you'll say, oh yeah, Jane's interested in that. And it's amazing how in peer groups, once they articulate what they want, and they only do it because it's part of the prep for the peer group, that then emboldens them to go back to work and ask, which sounds logical, but we're not used to asking.
It's a really good point. Yeah, even just the asking. Many people I've noticed have been surprised. Like, what? You want to know what I want? Yeah, that's a really good point, Jane.
There's a concept within, you were of Sandler, Jane. It's a sales, consultative sales thing. Within the Sandler world, they talk about mutual mystification. Right? There's lots of confusion going on all of the time, and we don't realize because we're not very clear in how we communicate. We don't ask. We don't state things as clearly. We don't clarify that somebody understood it the way that we meant them to understand it, and vice versa. What would you say when it comes to clearing mystification and leadership? That seems so important to do. What would you say are some of the tools or techniques that leaders can use to make sure there is more clarity with their teams?
First came to mind is a tactical one for each meeting that leaders say sounds obvious, but it's hard to do, Jane. And that's having somebody else clarify in a meeting at the end of each discussion or the end of the meeting, WWW, who does what by when. And often, yep, I'll do this. The by when is the hardest question to ask. And I prep the leaders by saying, ask by when, caveating, I don't need it tomorrow. Just give us all a date. Today's April 15th. May 1st, and then once that person gives a date, everybody around the table goes, okay, I know when that is going to come back. So that clarification for the benefit of all. And another tactical one is pausing. We all so believe in what we do that we tend to go on and on, but pausing and restating the main point at the end and saying, what do you think? Or does that make sense? And then shutting up so that they can articulate it in their words.
Going back to the disc thing, I'm a natural I, which means I have found it hard to shut up naturally in my life. I have to really work on that.
Which is why you're a podcast expert. You're in your native genius.
That makes sense.
And ... Yes.
What's the difference, Jane, between a team that collaborates and a team that transforms? How do you unlock that?
There's an overarching practice, and then I'll give you some specifics. Asking. The team knows how to improve. They just are too busy and don't want to criticize and don't go there. So creating a safe space to ask, be it an outsider like us or be it a peer outside of the business. but the team knows best their dynamics and the business needs. So every time I have one-on-one safe interviews and say, what are 2 ways your team could be more effective? Everybody has an answer, and inevitably there's a red thread. One example, family-owned business, all 6 team leaders on the executive team had the red thread of work orders are sucking up way too much time. And the team knows it wasn't outsider who recommended what to do. It was putting an issue on the table and the team brainstorming. And within 30 minutes, they had all agreed on a small shift, which was to create a central domain and clarify who owned which entry and decision into the domain. Work order entry, problem reallocation to the in the field person, client facing person owned the third. And that clarity meant 5 people didn't have to exchange emails. It was okay, he's going to be the one that makes that decision. Oh, good, he's made it. And within a month, they said it has saved hours each week. So, safe space, team knows best. What do you want to do about it?
In your experience, is it ever too late to intervene with a dysfunctional team?
It's never too late. Sometimes the personalities, particularly the leader, can't or won't change. And after 3 to 6 months, you've tried several ways to motivate the leader to change, and they're not going there. So action needs to be taken. Not fired, but isolated, to reduce the damage or the dysfunction. But putting it on the table, getting the person or people responsible is a key step that's often avoided. That's EQ stuff. We got too much work to deliver. Why go there?
Would you say, and maybe excuse the expression, but would you say the fish always stinks from the head down? That it is leadership that are often the cause of dysfunctional teams?
I wouldn't say always. I'd say because of their role, they could do a lot more, be more proactive in identifying and reducing the impact of certain strong individuals, but it's not caused by their style.
So it's not necessarily that they cause it, they might, but if they don't, they might not necessarily manage it in the best way. And there's different things they could do.
What's the biggest blind spot you see in today's leadership training and development landscape?
My first thought was lack of ongoing application check-ins. Okay, thank you for teaching me the best practice, goodbye. As opposed to at least 3 small 4-person virtual check-ins with accountability. Because we only change through practice and through knowing I'm going to have to report back on something. A lot of L&D teams are starting to practice that. So the second shortcoming is lack of airtime for the participant leader in the room. And there's a best practice rule of at least 50% of a meeting is breakout where I'm going to be talking and owning, Q&A, or preparing ahead of time and each member in the meeting presents. Even if it's just for 2 minutes, that's going to sharpen my focus. Okay, we're talking about productivity or cost effectiveness, and I'm representing this factory line. Okay, I better come with some data and that invests me in the meeting. So airtime.
I'd be really interested to hear your take on from a coaching perspective, because David and I are both coaches as well, and you kind of think in the world of AI, where roles are getting replaced, or at least parts of roles are getting replaced. Probably I'm biased to think this. I think that coaching couldn't be replaced by AI because it's a very human thing. However, AI is getting very, very good at the way it communicates. What do you see in terms of the future of coaching and development and leadership? Do you see AI being something that can replace it or enhance it? How do you see that playing out?
I think yes, to face the harsh reality, it can replace a portion of our role as with all other AI applications. And we need to say to ourselves, how can we leverage that and add to that? And it might result in less time and revenue with each client, but we care about the impact. So that's the worst case, even though impact could be achieved. So I think being open to it instead of saying, no way. And each of us have seen applications that do remind, prompt, etc. But as we all know, with digital versus synchronous, asynchronous versus synchronous, you need to have the leader report back to a living individual. Maybe it's only for 15 minutes, not 45, because that motivates them to articulate and own the progress or lack of progress. And AI being so topical, let me just add one CEO client in our peer group dared to bring that huge issue to the table, saying, my factory floor, it takes our new machine people 30 minutes of briefing from our experienced machine people. How can AI leverage that? And we ideated, and he went out and I introduced him to an AI, and now he has an online encyclopedia for each client order and machine specs, and it doesn't replace the senior leader. It allows the senior leader to have time to coach on further improvements. I think AI reduces the time requirement of humans in some ways so that they can add value in other more customer focused or individual focused ways.
Mm-hmm. And I think you made a good point when you said about ultimately still needing to speak to an individual, because no matter how great AI gets, human beings for millions of years, I don't know, a very long time, have been interacting with each other. And it's probably a very hard thing to be as accountable to a machine as you are to a human, or as motivated to deliver for a process and an interface than for a human. So there probably is still the need there from a leadership perspective in some capacity.
And Becky has prompted me to research what is the synapse response to digital accountability versus human, so I can get some stats on that. Thank you.
Please let me know what the result is. I know I'm not wearing it now, but my Fitbit definitely keeps me accountable. There's no humans involved there, but it does make me do my steps, to be fair.
Good example.
You said to focus on one niche as a coach, Jane. Why is that so critical in a space full of generalists these days?
I think there's a surfeit of supply of coaches, and to help the client choose and focus by us specializing, it can help the client and bring more value to the client. Leadership coach is too general and won't differentiate us and won't help the client.
I have some rapid fire questions for you as we close today. Who is one leader, living or dead, that you would love to coach?
Instead of choosing an Angela Merkel type leader who I respect, instead of choosing a big name, the leader profile I would ideally like to coach is one who is running his own business or business unit and wants to find greater purpose in what he's spending 60 hours a week doing. So sorry to give you a general answer, but that's me. It's not a famous disputed politician or other.
Well, what's one of your favorite quotes or phrases?
One I really believe in, and I should quote more often, is a Gandhi quote, which is live as if you were to die tomorrow, learn as if you were to live forever, because it captures the appreciate today and keep learning.
What's a book that's influenced your thinking deeply?
There's a book written by a California woman whose title I'm going to send you, which says after every interaction with friend or colleague, take your pulse and see if it is sucking energy from you. And if it is, you don't need to invest in that person. Peers we can't necessarily stop communicating with, but it applies to so many people we interact with that we're trying to help, but they drain us. And that allowed me to say no to people because If I have less energy, 1 + 1 = 0.5.
Finish this sentence. Great leadership is.
Great leadership is knowing the person.
Well, Jane, thank you for speaking with us today. You've had an amazing career so far, and I'm sure your peer groups are happy to have you. And for folks listening and watching, hopefully they can reach out to you. Where would you like to guide them? LinkedIn, or where would you like to point people to get in touch with you?
LinkedIn's probably the easiest, as we have a seat on a new peer group. Jane Sommers-Kelly, LinkedIn. There's not too many double barrel names out there. David and Becky, thank you and Verizon. Keep up informing us and asking hard questions.